got Stumptown Coffee Roasters, organic. Ooh, so fancy. It's the Holler Mountain Creamy and Caramel. Wow, I can't talk.
Yeah.
It's tasty. It's actually good.
Stumptown?
Stumptown. Stumptown. I don't know.
Chocolate?
It's no caramel.
Oh.
Caramel, creamy and caramel.
We're supposed to get ice. It's gonna be so hot.
These are just Dixie cups. Somebody's gonna have a comment about like how you shouldn't drink hot coffee out of like a
Dixie cup.
Yeah, there's something wrong about it.
I need those little cup things.
Yep. Or
it's fogging up my glasses.
We got to start bringing our own. Like, gotta bring your own mug.
Yeah, rise and shine.
There you go. I got one that says Dog Dad. Let's bring that.
Do you have a mug?
We have like 12 mugs.
Yeah, I bought Megan. It sits on a plate and stays warm, so she can work and do her little thing.
Dane needs that, because she'll go back and like microwave her coffee 2 or 3 times, like because it gets cold before. I'll just drink it cold. Like, I'm a psychopath. I'll just drink it when it goes room temperature and be fine with it.
Yeah,
I like this one. I'm telling you, this show's gonna make me a black coffee.
It's better. It's a little better.
I think of all of the ones we've had, this is the most palatable black coffee. All right. Well, welcome back to Coffee with Coach. I'm Jake. This is Brock. We got another episode for you. You want to tell them what we're talking about?
Movement standards.
Oh, gosh.
Why are they so important?
I mean, there's a whole YouTube page dedicated to them.
There's a guy.
There's a page. Yeah, but in CrossFit, we have this thing called movement standards. Most people watching this probably already know what that is, but if you're new to CrossFit, a movement standard basically tells you whether or not you completed a movement. And it might be one of the most important things we do in CrossFit compared to most other fitness modalities, because then it allows us to measure and retest and find out if we're getting better.
Yeah. I think specific, measurable, and repeatable. So what am I doing? What's the standard of which I do it? Mm-hmm. And can I do that consistently when I'm fatigued or when no one's watching?
Ooh.
And I think that's that's the importance of all of it.
Yeah, and so I think, when we go down the rabbit hole of movement standards, the big thing to talk about is like, why do they matter, right? And for a lot of athletes, especially who are newer to fitness, but specifically newer to CrossFit in general, they're like, why do you care if my hips go below my knees on a squat? And there is an entire dissertation we could give on that. But the reality of it is mechanics matter, right? So if you're not squatting below parallel, not only are you not getting the stimulus of the movement, but you're also potentially putting yourself at risk for injury, right? Because the forces are playing in ways that you don't want them to. But the bigger and most important thing for new people is, hey, if you're only squatting to, let's say, 45 degrees today, and then in 6 months you're squatting to, 80 degrees, and you can't lift anymore, but your range of motion is increased by that much, we can't measure that. Because as a coach, I'm not out there with a protractor measuring, right? But if we always squat to 80 degrees, right, below parallel, below 90, then we can measure the progress by the weight moved, right? So that, again, measurable, repeatable kind of thing.
With movement standards, it's important to understand at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? Mm-hmm. And we're trying to achieve consistency and being able to tell somebody or talk to somebody in a way that you understand universally across the board. Mm-hmm. So if I say I did 5 strict pull-ups, we know my legs weren't involved. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to kip or cheat the rep. I went from a fully extended arm to bringing my chin above the bar. And whether I go across the street or to Texas or Australia, when I say I did 5 pull-ups, we kind of understand that that's the same language we talk across the board.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, another quote this week. One of my favorite philosophy quote is, wisdom begins at the definition of terms. And so if you don't define it, you can't, like you're saying, we can't speak the universal language of it. So, a lot of people are like, I'm doing pull-ups, but their elbows never extend. Well, then how do we know what you're doing fully, right? There's a beginning and there's an end. And if there's gray area, it's a bad standard. And so I tell people all the time who get upset about standards, hey, can you give me a better definition? Because I'll accept it. If you can convince me of this range of motion is better than that range of motion, but the research backs it up when you look at it as well, of like, hey, there's more research out there saying squatting below parallel is good for you than that one guy in the 70s who said you need to squat above parallel.
Yeah.
And so if we can't define what we're doing, and we can't say, this is what a press looks like, this is what a squat looks like, this is what a pull-up looks like, we're kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah. No, and when it comes to movement standards, they can change.
For
I
sure.
mean, how many times does the burpee standard change? When I jump, do I jump with 2 feet at the same
Mm-hmm.
time or a single foot at the same time? Or do I prance or step over it?
Yep.
And those can be defined by whoever is prescribing the workout.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I've told somebody, hey, we're going to do thrusters today and we're going to take the bar from the rack and you'll
Yep.
start standing, or no, you've got to clean it and your squat clean doesn't count as the first rep.
Yep.
You got to clean, stand up, and then begin your thrusters. But I define that as the coach,
Mm-hmm.
or if I'm in a competition setting, whoever wrote the workout defines the standard. And the standard is a standard. It is what it is.
Yep.
And it just lets us know that we're all speaking the same language and we're all moving towards a very similar place with how we're moving throughout that workout.
Yeah, and I think that understanding comes down to like, what is the testing field, right? So it actually comes into play of like higher level scientific knowledge of what are we comparing to, and what, like you're saying, whoever sets the standard, that's what we're following, right? So when we do most recently the CrossFit Open and quarterfinals, right, that's coming from HQ. That's a standard that is set for all of us across the board. If you sign up, you're supposed to be, now not everybody is, but you're supposed to be adhering to these standards. And so it's about being able to compare and measure, right? And so like, if somebody in Europe is squatting, a quarter of the way down, and then somebody else somewhere else in the world is squatting all the way down, but hitting their heels, those are different movements, right? And those are creating different amount of forces, different amount of work being completed. And so you're getting to a point where you're basically saying like, I want to do less work when I break the standard. And so that's one of those things where, adhering to standards is so incredibly important. Now, in the world of CrossFit, we have seen a lot of people not adhering to them recently. And that's pretty disappointing, because it's saying, hey, like, I'm in this because I want to be better for myself, but also in a competitive space. But then we watch competitors just completely disregard that for the sake of getting a better score.
Yeah, I think the big assumption when you talk about the competitive athlete or somebody who's entered a competition and defining standards is there's an assumption that they have the functional capacity to do those movements the way that you would assume they would be done.
Yep.
So if I were to say we're going to back squat today, if you're in a competition setting, those athletes you feel can squat.
Yeah.
Now, classmates who come into class and we have back squats prescribed, as I'm coaching and I'm watching and observing, not everybody is at the same place when it comes to functional capacity.
Sure, absolutely.
So I might tell that athlete in class, hey, I want you to sit down on this box, pause, and then stand up.
Right.
And to me, that's their squat standard for that day. And then the next time I see them, hopefully we've improved or they've gotten stronger. And now I want you to sit to a lower box or move to a different target, or so in the competition setting, as we're in this game season, athletes, the assumption is they all can move to the standards that you would agree upon typically. Then it's up to, because they're racing, right? They're trying to go as fast as possible. It's up to the person that is observing or judging them to make sure they adhere to the standards. And it's the role of the individual who's judging to say, no, that was not to standard. In class, I've got a whole different mindset. I see that you're working to the standards and I see that you're challenging and pushing yourself. No, that was not a pull-up. You did not get your chin over the bar. However, you got your chin higher than you've ever gotten it before. So congrats. We're moving the needle in the right direction.
And that's super important. I think, obviously the standard is like the ultimate, right? And when you're competing, you have no choice but to adhere to the standard. But we talk about this a lot here. There's a difference between competing and training. Now, training, the ultimate goal is I'd like to adhere to all standards all the time. That's in CrossFit what we call being RX'd, right? And as you begin to get more competitive, or if we are comparing scores amongst others to, what we talked about last week, drive everybody forward, you got to use those standards as that context. And we're like you're saying, if I got an athlete who, couldn't pull up more than 2 inches and their chin's just below the bar, we're celebrating because we've made progress. And you can measure that because, hey, we know what the standard is and we got closer. But if you've got three athletes who we all know can do pull-ups and one's definitely not getting their chin over the bar, then we say, hey, your score is not as correct as others
Right.
because you didn't follow standard.
Right.
And then, as we look at the CrossFit competitive sphere in total, you were making a good point, is like, we're assuming you can follow standard. And as each stage goes forward, the standards should get tighter because theoretically you're getting fitter, more capable athletes from the open, then to quarters, on to semis, and then eventually the games. And I think sometimes what happens is with judges, they just assume, oh, these athletes know what they're doing. Oh, they didn't quite break parallel, but like, this is a pro athlete. They could have broken parallel.
Yeah.
And I think more often than not, we see them being lax on standards as it gets better rather than tight about it. And that's bothersome sometimes to me because I'd like to see these athletes get held to the highest level of standards.
Yeah.
So
what's that old saying? Like, you should never meet your idol.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you watched any of the behind the scenes on the recent games, I mean, Tia, who's an amazing athlete, comes across. I feel like she'd slit your throat to win. I mean, she's
Yeah.
But you need. I mean, at
Yeah.
her level and where she's trying to be, like, there's a fire in there that you only get that type of reaction.
For sure.
But she's out here doing her very best. She's pushing herself to the very limits of what her body's capable of. And she just wants to know that if she gets beaten, it was a fair playing field.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I think you're referring to the pegboard incident.
All the F's.
Yeah, all the which was, I mean, look, I have been just as angry on a much smaller scale and a much lesser setting, but it's frustrating because you're out there and you're willing to be held to standard, and then when there's some sort of advantage somebody gets because of an equipment failure or a judge who's too lax, it kind of takes away the integrity of what you're doing out there. And it really boils down to whether or not you're willing to say, hey, this is important enough to hold standard, or if it's not, why are we competing? Why are we comparing? And yeah, that's one of those things where I understand why she's upset, and we have people in class who are very competitive and they'll get upset when somebody who is kind of new to RXing things or maybe shouldn't quite be doing RX, and they're like, oh, but they're going as fast as me. And what I tell those athletes is, I'll worry about that, and what you need to do is beat them anyway.
Yeah, the ego starts to come into play in a way that I don't like.
No, not at all.
I don't want to create an environment where people feel like they're having to look over their shoulders, or there's a lack of integrity in what we're trying to do. The reality is, for most of us, these workouts that we come to every day at the gym they're just supposed to help us get fitter.
Yep.
And part of that is moving through a full range of motion. Part of that is making sure that our efforts are virtuous in nature.
Yep.
But if it gets to a place where there's cattiness or ego involved, let's take a hard look in the mirror and find out why that's important to you.
Yep.
and where that may be going wrong. Because at the end of the day, what somebody else does in a workout doesn't have a direct impact on your health and fitness.
No.
Maybe your mental health and fitness.
Yeah.
But hopefully you're using that as a way to push you to get better. Or, like you said, hey, I'm going to beat you regardless of what you do. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to go out and, especially when we talk about movement standards, if you're that hung up about what somebody else is doing, don't throw stones when you look at a glass house. I should see you move perfectly.
Oh, yeah. Here's a question for you. Do you think athletes in a CrossFit, not in a competition, in a CrossFit gym, more often than not, are they unaware that they're missing standard, or are they intentionally missing standard?
I think the reality is 95% of the people who come in and do class could care less. Sure, they want to be coached, they want to be taught, they do want to make sure that they're improving. They want to be acknowledged for their progress.
Yeah.
And some of it is, hey, I squatted to depth, or my toes touched the bar every single time. So I think the vast majority of people who are a member of a CrossFit facility don't walk in the front door saying, I hope I get judged today on my.
The reason I asked that question is I agree with that sentiment as well. Is like, people get wound up, their elbows didn't lock out fully, and they're squatting to 90, and it's like, they're not doing it on purpose. They're not doing it to beat you. that's where they are in their fitness journey. And I think, like you said, when the ego comes into play, athletes look at that and go like, oh, they're cheating. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, they're here to get a great workout, and we're encouraging them to get closer to standards every day.
Listen, if you have enough focus on somebody
Oh.
else during a workout, you are not dialed into what you're doing.
Yep.
If I'm in the middle of a workout and I'm standing looking around at everybody else
Mhm.
who's not doing what I think to be correct, then I'm probably not doing myself a service,
Yep.
pushing myself.
Yep.
So it, again, man, focus, like, keep the main thing, the
Mhm.
main thing. And the main thing is, like, did I get better? Did I get better?
Mhm.
And what do I care about Joey or, and I hate that. I hate to hear it. And I was guilty of it when I was younger.
For sure. Me too.
And there became a lot of maturity that had to happen. Like, at the end of the day, I get to show up and I get to put on my best foot forward into being the best version of myself
Mhm.
that day. And there are times where I don't hit standards, and there are times where I do look across and I say, but I have to refocus. And hey, man, what's important is that I move well, I
Yep.
move with integrity, I search for virtuosity in how I move. And some days are going to be better than others, but I'm working consistently each and every
Yep.
day to make sure. And I know for me, the pressure as a coach
Absolutely.
is I've got to move to standard,
Mhm.
because if I'm not moving to standard, how can I ask anybody
Yeah.
else to move to
Yeah, I
standard?
think, and that the cool thing about the standard is it really is, especially for the better athletes in the gym and the coaches, is like it's a mirror to look into to say like, hey, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Because people like, I think some of the better athletes in gyms will notice this, but some won't. And it's like people look up to you and they want to be as fit as you are, and you're part of setting their standard. So if you go to a gym where you see some of the best athletes also not getting close to standard, you look around, and no matter how hard the coach is trying, everyone else is probably a little bit shy of it,
Yeah.
right? Or if you got a gym where your best athletes are also your best movers, I bet you everyone else looks pretty good too.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that. There are lots of things as coaches that are, you want to set the example. My biggest problem is I can't count. And I worry day in and day out that somebody's like going to look at a set and I screw up my count and they're like, he's cheating. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
I, and that's why I like situations where we have judges and competitions and standards, because then it takes the pressure off of myself, but it also takes the pressure off of any other athlete to say, hey, this is my time. And that's why the open's so valuable, is this is my time to know, am I really doing what I think I'm doing in a class, in a training environment? And if not, now I know, hey, I need to reevaluate my squat depth or my lockout or how high I'm getting on pull-ups. And at least for us, I think in here, we had a really good time of like athletes actually finding out they're doing better than they were than doing worse than they were. But yeah, the standard is really helpful because again, it's like it's a mirror for the individual and for the gym to say, are we doing things effectively enough to move the needle?
Day in and day out, what I hope to create here is the classes are only a competition with yourself
Mm-hmm.
to get better each
Yep.
and every day. That's what the classes are
Yep.
for. If you're looking for external competition, sign up for any of the 5,000 events
Oh yeah.
on Competition Corner.
Yep.
Now, today we tested our 2K row. And yes, in the middle of that thing, I was looking at other screens to kind of empower myself that I can push a little harder.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, the athlete next to me who finished 30 seconds ahead of me and the athlete to this side who finished a minute behind me were just exhausted.
Yeah. You gave it your all.
So, the standard that we
Mm-hmm.
achieved was all three of us rode 2,000 meters for time. And the only competition within that was I wanted to beat my scores from the times I've done it previously.
Absolutely.
And I used them as fuel. When you're competing externally, when there's a prize at the end of it, different setting. Everything's got to be equal. We need to know the playing field is level.
You're hitting a nerve with me.
So but classes aren't that.
Yeah.
In class, I only want to create an environment with movement standards that says you are moving better each and every day.
Yeah.
And to do a pull-up, arm extended, chin over bar, we are improving your functional capacity to be able to do that skill. And if I only allow you to half rep every single time, then we're never working towards improving your functional capacity.
Yeah. And that all goes back to coaching. And, I think you touched on it earlier of like the responsibility of the judge in a competition setting to hold standard. It's the same as a coach in a coaching environment is, obviously I want all of our athletes to care enough to hold standard on themselves. But there's a lot of situations where it's even kinesthetic awareness, right? They don't know that they're not breaking parallel.
Yeah.
They don't know that they're not locking out their elbows. And as coaches, those reminders, even if it's just like, hey, let's extend a little bit more overhead. Those things are incredibly valuable because eventually they'll start to feel a little bit more. And so, yeah, I think in both a competition and a class setting, it is really important that those who are not working out are holding those standards.
Early in my CrossFit days, we'd back squat. I'd put the barbell on the back, I'd go down, I'd come back up, and the coach would look at me, Adam, I remember, and he's like, you need to squat lower. You need to squat. And I'm like, Adam, I'm going as low as I can.
Yep.
It felt like my hips were about to rip apart. Without me knowing, took a video of it, showed it to me, and I said, God dang it, I do need to squat lower. But I felt like it really felt like I was going, ass to grass, like they say. But it took the video, it took me seeing it, and then for about 6 months, it was sitting in frog pose, couch stretch, air squatting, video recording myself, until eventually it was like, man, that's a good looking squat. That's not terrible anymore.
And that's what's really cool about that is the standard gave you the context for all of it, right? Is you felt like there was no more range of motion left.
Yeah.
Which if you take a video and your butt's on your heels, okay, you're right. But if you're not, all of a sudden that informs a whole level of things that you could improve on, including mobility, motor control, all those things. And so that's another valuable thing to why we hold standard, because again, if you don't know, then you don't know.
Well, the dirty secret of all of it was, as I worked through couch and frog pose and pigeon, my low back started not to hurt as often. My knees felt better. I was running more efficiently.
Yeah.
All these other things came about because my mobility was, for lack of a better term, terrible. I saw the squat depth, said, man, I got to fix that. I fixed it, and like the whole world opened up for me.
Well, now, one might argue that's functional fitness, right? That's the whole point of what we do is like, if you're just trying to build muscle, look big, and get aesthetic, maybe range of motion doesn't matter. Standards mean nothing because it's all visual and subjective. But when you come into a space like a CrossFit gym or any facility that calls itself functional, and you're not improving your function, some might say, why would your back squat make you a better runner? But we found out right now is like, hey, it's because I worked on my mobility and found out that I had dysfunction in places, all because a coach said, hey, you don't squat low enough. Yeah. And then the residual effects are I run faster, I feel better every day, I wake up, my back doesn't hurt. Right. And so like a lot of that is just like all of the context that it gives us allows for us to get more functional, to get better, and again, to move the needle, which I think as coaches, that's our goal for everyone every day, is just move that needle a little bit in the right direction.
So, question for you, who's responsible for movement standards?
Yeah. Well, if I'd say everyone, right? But I think whatever the top of the situation is, right? So Dave Castor is responsible for our movement standards, and then that comes down, and enforcement is the next level, which is judges, right? Or in a gym setting, it's whoever's writing the program, and then the coach is enforcing the program, because there's so much nuance to movement, right? Yeah. And then when you get to like a competition setting, it's going to be whoever the director / programmer is, and then the judges in that competition. Because the hard part, especially competition, is, and this goes to the highest level of competition, the lowest level of competition, athletes are moving as fast as possible. They're riding the line, because if you aren't, you're not competing. And so the judge needs to be like, hey, you're not squatting low enough. And the athlete, instead of arguing, this gets me fired up, is like, arguing does nothing, especially at a local competition. There's no video review. Arguing does nothing. Just fix your standard. Get better, get through the workout, and do your best that you can.
Yeah, rubbin's racing, right? Like, it's not a problem until it becomes a problem.
I mean, look, I'll admit it. I squat as close to 89 degrees as I can every competition, every rep, because it's faster. And when the judge says no rep on my neck, I don't even turn around. I don't look at them. I just go, okay, and I squat lower for as many reps as I can. And the thing is like, I know that I'm risking that no rep, and I'm really willing to take the one, and then the rest of the workout or whatever it is, I just do better. But there are a lot of people who try to skirt that, and a lot of people who try to avoid that. I've been in competitions where like they'll no rep me, and I'll do something similar. There was one, and I was thrusters right at the end of it, and it was like bike 5-4-3 thrusters, right? And it got heavy. Like the last thruster was like 205 or something like that, and I got a no rep on what should have been my last rep. And I'm just like, I know it was good, but whatever. And I did it again, and I paused at the squat, and I paused overhead, and I was like, "Are you gonna no rep me again?" Because it's unfortunate, especially at the local level, that it's like these are moms, these are people who have 9 to 5 jobs, and they're put into scenarios to call good reps, no reps, all that. But at the same time, it's like they should be prepared better by the directors or whoever else is running the situation, because it is frustrating as an athlete to get a no rep when you don't think you should. And obviously it's not the place of the athlete to be able to decide that. Sometimes, things fall in your favor. You do a chest to bar and your shirt touches, but your chest doesn't. You get a free rep. But then other times you're doing something, you feel like you've done everything you can, you're still getting no reps. So
I think to answer the question myself, I think at the end of the day, I'm responsible for movement standards in all settings. If I'm in a competition, I need to move to the standard. If I'm in a class, I need to move to the standard. It is the competition programmer or it is the head coach who writes the workouts job to define the standard.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
It's the judge's job to validate my ability to hit the standard. It is my coach's job to help me move to efficiently executing the standard. And I think if all of our athletes took that approach to say, I need to learn how to squat better, extend my arms overhead, pull efficient, run, all those things, then the standards start to kind of take care of themselves.
For sure. I think the point you're making too is like if you're gonna sign up to do CrossFit, whether it's in just a class setting, a competition setting, in all facets, like our entire mission is to be better, move with virtuosity, to seek
that mindset.
And so I think if you want to actually pursue CrossFit the way it's intended, wanting to be better and wanting to adhere to a perfect standard only improves everything else about your life. I'm not no repping you if you're doing the movement right. Like I don't think in the history of all coaches ever there have been many no reps just to mess with somebody, right? If you're squatting below parallel, I'm gonna say good job. If you're extending all the way overhead, I'm gonna say good job. I don't think no reps happen in super unjust fashions, especially in a class setting. If a coach is talking to you, if your coach is telling you to squat lower, they're not just doing it to hear their voice. They do it because they care. Exactly. So cool. I think that's the best place to leave it. Any other thoughts on standards?
If I could give advice to anybody, it's the standards are the standards. Don't argue them. Work towards them. And, if you're so worried about other people, take a look in the mirror and say, why is that so important to me? And what does that say about me as a person who's just trying to get better for myself?
Record your workout, watch and see how you feel about your own standards. And, I think that's one, a great coaching tool for athletes to see themselves. But two, it's really going to give you an experience that maybe you aren't expecting. Cool. Well, thank you guys again for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, notification bell. What else do the influencers say? I don't know. I watch enough content. I should know this better. But be on the lookout for next week.